Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. The following interview is designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be. Your host, Derek Champagne, is the founder and CEO of The Artist Evolution, a full-service agency building successful brands, marketing tools, and campaigns, and also the author of the best-selling book, Don't Buy a Duck. And now, let's begin today's Leadership Series interview.
Welcome to the Business Leadership Series, where our goal is to inspire you to become the best leader that you can be. We've got a treat today. I'm excited. I was just talking to him. I said I've only twice had a guest on more than once. Dr. Michael Hudson is with us today. This will be the third time, and it's because he has such a great story. Founder and principal at Big Idea Guru LLC. He's a strategic advisor, consultant, and speaker who helps leaders and influencers to be heard and understood when the stakes are high. He's the host of the Get Your Message Heard podcast and a frequent guest on business communication and personal development podcasts. Michael, thanks for coming back today. I'm excited to talk to you.
Derek, it's an honor and a privilege. Thank you.
Hey, your bio's great, but let's just cut right past that, okay? We're going to assume that you're on here because you're really good at what you do, and you are. You're the best at it. You're really good at it. We're going to dig into that, but I want to get right to the heart of things too. Is you were on last time, and there's been a few times when I've connected with a guest who's sharing a story to where it just grabbed my heart, and you had me in tears talking and listening to you because you shared so authentically. You shared some things for the first time with me. And in our really authentic, organic conversation, and you've had some absolutely transformational things happen since then. And your willingness to be vulnerable and authentic and open is a game changer. And I know you probably hear that a lot, but you're living it by example. So let's do this. Let's just start and let you share. Just talk from your heart and share a little bit about you, and then some transformations that have happened since you and I talked last.
Glad to, and thank you. Appreciate the kind words very much. And, Derek, when we talked last, it was really when I had just gotten comfortable with the idea of sharing my story.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure at that time I wasn't using the words I use now. And I think there's an important reality there that I'll share as we talk through this, which is, I was struggling for a long time figuring out, how does one share things that are sensitive, that are going to make people, number one, maybe experience some pain that they've had, sort of resurfaces it. Number two, that question of, if you share something that's really vulnerable, true, and authentic, are you going to turn people off because they're going to think you're pandering or something? And I realized one day in a conversation when someone confronted me with a very direct question and said, if you can change one person's life by sharing it, would you? And I said, I get it. You're right. And, rather than be cryptic with your audience here about, where we're going with this, my reality is that I was raped and molested for a year when I was a child, when I was 10. And by someone who threatened to kill me if I ever told anyone.
Yeah.
And at the time, I think the thing I probably didn't share the last time with you is, my father was the police officer who would have investigated a charge had one been brought.
Wow.
And the person who would have, been involved with, knowing if a complaint was made. But it silenced me. And it silenced me literally for, 10 or 12, 15 years. And the challenge for me, Derek, was I really wanted to be the guy out there. I wanted to be on that stage. I wanted to be in the front of the room. But I just couldn't do it because I thought I had no value. I thought I was worthless because that had happened to me. And when someone tells you they're going to kill you if you talk, you tend to not want to talk.
Right.
And the truth is I suppressed all that. And, one of the reasons I share it now, and I think your audience is a wonderful audience to have an opportunity to share it with, and is a lot of us have had something like that. It doesn't have to be a physical issue. There are lots of traumas that happen in our life, early childhood experiences we have, that shape us and define us in ways we don't even acknowledge, in part because many of us suppress the memories. And I think men in particular think we're not allowed to talk about this. And, I don't say this as a quiz or an obnoxious comment, but you may have noticed I used the word rape when I just described that.
Right.
I'm pretty sure if you go back and listen to our last interview, I used the word molested.
Yeah.
And one day I got thinking about the fact that we need to call this what it was. And that if a man says that, it makes it a lot more clear what we're talking about. And what I have found since I made that change is that it creates a whole different level of connection. The other thing, Derek, that I have learned since we talked last, which is really, really, really important for people to understand, when you do the work and work through that thing that happened to you and figure out what it meant and what it equipped you to do, it changes the way you need to tell the story. You know, I think the last time we talked, I went into lots of detail. You don't need lots of detail. You only need that sentence that I spoke about 2 minutes ago.
Right.
To make the connection. So,
yeah, thanks again for sharing that. And I love hearing the update. And there's more updates you're going to share with us in a minute. But I just, for our listeners that haven't heard your interview, and I'll put in the show notes a way to go back and link to that, because the comparison is definitely notable. And both interviews I know are powerful. So I don't discredit the first conversation. It was really powerful. But give us a quick highlight too, though. You talked about, some things that were crippling later. I mean, you were tenured with Cornell University and University of Illinois. I mean, you had achieved a level of success and status, and you were feeling crippled in some areas from not addressing this.
Yeah, and Derek, the thing is, I blocked this out entirely. In my teens, I didn't even acknowledge it happened. I don't even know that I remember that. I mean, I knew it happened, but it just wasn't conscious. I just pressed it back and pressed it back and pressed it back. And then I began chasing validation. And I'm not the only one's ever done that.
Right.
And I chased validation. And frankly, pardon the arrogance, I was pretty good at it.
Right.
And I did. I had a lot of success because I was a workaholic. It turns out I did three things to suppress the issue. And one, I became a workaholic, because if I worked really hard, I grew up in a family where if you worked really hard, that was a good thing.
Right.
And I found that if I kept working hard, I'd get recognized and acknowledged, and I'd create some impact, and that would work for me. Right. Number two, at 10 years of age, I became addicted to sugar. And, whenever I felt anything, I would go consume something sweet. As a result, I ended up dealing with, being referred to as fat boy. And always loved it, Derek, when I was chosen for a sports pickup game, either in gym class or, at lunch or something. And it was always me, the last guy chosen, with the following phrase, quote, "We'll take fat boy." So that sort of got involved as well, and is a reality. But I didn't really own or acknowledge that addiction to sugar. I knew I was frustrated and my weight kept going up and down, but, I got caught up in all that stuff we can get caught up with, those kind of things. The third thing that kind of happened is I retreated, and actually it wasn't a retreat so much as an advance in my learning into story, because I found that story could captivate me and keep me involved and keep me engaged and make me see things differently. And then all of a sudden, and frankly, Derek, it was a big piece of my success.
Right.
Building nationally recognized programs at two major universities. One of the things you have to do is tell the story to the donors and the funders, or you don't get anything done. But what I didn't realize was that my story had been buried. And all of a sudden, when I got into a scenario where the pressure was really bad, I started experiencing some serious depression issues, finally realized I had to go get help. And I don't know if I shared this the last time or not, but, I went to 14 therapy sessions. And in the 14th, I walked in and he asked me a question, and I looked at him and I said, "No, you're not asking questions today. I am." because I knew I had told him everything there was to know about me, and he'd never told me anything. And I said, "This isn't helping me. You understand everything. What am I supposed to do? What's going on?" And he looked at me and he said, I know I owe you something. He said, and let me tell you why I haven't said anything. He said, pardon this one question, but have you really told me everything? I said, absolutely. He said, well, here's where the disconnect is. Everything in your story speaks of being a victim, and you've never mentioned being a victim. And Derek, I'm going to hit rewind here and go back to the days of VCRs, because that's where we were then. The minute he said that, literally, the minute he said that, and I attribute this to God, you can use the universe, whatever you believe makes these things happen. It was as though somebody pressed the VCR button in my head and played a video of the worst of the experiences that I went through during that year. And I mean, clear video.
Wow.
It was high def before we had high def.
Wow.
And I sat there on the couch and cried for 3 hours.
Huh.
And at the same time, Derek, that was a first step, right? Because that opened the door to me finally realizing, I did the stupid thing most men would do. I processed it for a little while. I kind of buried it again and moved on and went back to doing what? Chasing recognition, chasing accolades, being a workaholic, eating more sugar when I felt bad. And what has happened since you and I last talked is I made a decision to test that word rape. And I tested it by going on stage at Michael and Amy Port's Heroic Public Speaking Live event back in 2017, where I invested in the 45-minute live coaching on stage in front of an audience of 400 to 500 people, and tested what happens when, frankly, a 60-year-old man says that he was raped. And I can tell you what happens. Everybody leans back in their chair.
Right.
Some kind of put their arms across their chest, kind of hugging themselves.
Yeah.
And some can no longer look at you.
Right. Right.
And I tested that very, very bluntly like that. And I didn't set your audience up for that either, because you kind of had a little bit. But what I then realized, what the coaching was you need to let them know you're okay. You need to let them know that, you're not going to do some exercise that makes them feel uncomfortable. And you might want to let the ones know that have had that experience that, you feel their empathy and so forth. So I went back and I came out and did it again. But this time I did just what I just said. I said, look, I'm fine. What I'm going to tell you is difficult to hear. I'm okay with it. We're not going to do an uncomfortable exercise. And if you had a similar experience, I'm sorry that happened to you. And then I used that same line again. And Derek, 450 people leaned in.
There you go.
I mean, literally leaned in their chairs. Now, the real message in that story, I hope for your listeners, is if you've got something like that in your past and you haven't dealt with it, please deal with it. Please find a way. And if you need to get started, call me.
Yeah.
I'll help you think through how you get started. But the second thing is realize something, because I have firmly had this, everything that has happened to me, Derek, since I was on that stage at that moment has convinced me our journeys have given every one of us a gift, and that gift is the lessons we have earned from the path we have walked.
Right.
And we will discover that as we recognize those and acknowledge those and own those and get comfortable sharing those, there are people who need them who are going to be brought into our path. And what's amazing is they'll pretty much raise their hands and tell you.
That's right.
Even when you haven't said a word. I can't tell you, Derek, the number of people who have crossed my path in the last 2.5 years who at some point in the conversation say something and I realize, you know what? I need to tell you what happened to me so you understand you're not alone. Which opens the door to a whole different relationship. And, some of your listeners are business people and are going, well, I wouldn't do that. It wasn't appropriate. Well, it's absolutely appropriate. You've got people you're leading who have had this happen to them. It's in their way.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what else I want to hear too, though? Tell us, you started telling us the addiction to sugar and some things that have happened since you were on the show. Tell us more about the progression with that, because that's something you were struggling with a couple of years ago when we talked.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, this is a journey. This is not something
this is a roller coaster ride.
This is a lifelong journey too, right? I mean, this is not something we get figured out at 21. I wish we did. I mean, you got another 39 years of figuring it out, and you're still figuring. And we all continue will figure it out, but you continue to grow. But tell us about some wins on that.
Well, and the big win is changing lives. And I won't tell you the long story, but there is a specific person who was number one. They were that first person. That when I was challenged, if you could change one person's life, would you tell the story?
Right.
They were in the first audience I ever shared the story with. And then I watched them 9 months later completely change their life because they had the same experience and they went and dealt with it. And now they're in a different place.
Yeah.
So, that's a big win. Second big win for me was I finally figured out what it meant. And that took a lot of work. I went through the graduate school program that Michael and Amy Port offer at Heroic Public Speaking, which has been a major changer in my life here.
Wow. And
it requires you to write a 45 to 60-minute keynote speech and, learn more about how to deliver it better. And I was moving past my talent that I'd gotten by on for years to sort of building some craft around that. And unlocking that speech and realizing what it taught me, why it mattered, who it was for, was really powerful. Now, at the end of that program, Derek, you record a demo video. And if you go to michaelhudson.com, you can see that demo video on the speaker page. And here's the thing. The day I got that video, July 2nd, 2018, I saw the video, I watched it, and I sat there in tears. Not because of the message, not because I had finished the journey, but because I was looking at a guy who is not the guy who owns that message. I'm looking at a guy who is 75 pounds heavier than the guy who really owns that message, and the guy that I believe should have started sharing that message and dealt with it back when I was in my teens, because I knew it had impacts at that time, all of which I fleshed out in this process.
Right.
So I made a decision. I'm going to sit down and figure out, why have I gained and lost the same 35 to 50 pounds so many times in my life? And the simple thing I discovered was, number one, I had always used cheat days in my diets. I'd eat very well 6 days a week. And the seventh day, I'd eat whatever I wanted.
Yeah.
Well, that never was working.
Right.
Because and the second thing was that I never lost the weight for me. I never owned the fact that I could be smaller. I thought I was destined to weigh in the range I weighed, and I would get the accolades, chasing those again. Didn't go away, Derek. And I would chase the accolades, and people noticed the first 35 pounds. And then
Right.
I had this belief that I didn't realize I had until I sat down and did this work that afternoon after I saw the video, that I didn't think I could weigh under 200 pounds. I'd spent most of my life between 235 and 250. And in fact, I had decided, by the way, Derek, in December of 2017, when I went to the closet to go to get dressed for my wife's Christmas party for her real estate organization, and I had to go to the suit that I kept in the corner that was called Did You Get Here Again? And it was the only thing I had that fit. And I said, I'm changing this. So during that ride and that journey of getting that message figured out, I managed to gain and lose about 10 or 12 pounds. But, I was like 5 or 6 pounds lighter than the 250 I weighed that night. But when I saw the video and I went through and did the work, I said, okay, what am I going to do? Well, let's take sugar out. Let's take all foods that trigger the insulin response out, because you're very sensitive to that. Because in the past, when the people stop saying you look good, you just go back to the old behaviors again, just so you could get them to say you look good again the next time you lost the weight.
Right.
Pretty stupid cycle, but I'm really good at it.
Well, and many of us can relate to that. That's not uncommon.
And so, no, I'm not going to turn this into a keto podcast, but I decided I'm going to use the keto diet. And I'm not going to use a diet. I'm going to change my eating. And as I talk to you today, I weigh 170.
Wow.
And I have weighed 170 for about 7 months now.
Wow.
I have more energy. I have less pain. I think more clearly. There's so many things that gave me. But the biggest thing that gave me, Derek, is one day about a year and a half, when I was down about 65 to 70 pounds, I walked around the corner and walked into our bathroom, and straight ahead of us, and when I walk into my bathroom, is my mirror and my vanity. And then I turned left to go to the closet. And as I rounded the curve to go to the closet, I stopped, literally kind of on that stopped cold moment, because I saw myself in the mirror. And at that moment, I realized that's the guy I've been looking for a very long time. That's the guy who owns that message. That's the guy who can now go share that message and know and feel honestly that it has more credibility now, because I know I've done the work and I know I'm on the other side. That's what I really spend a lot of my time doing, is helping people do just that.
And so many things I love about what you're sharing, Michael. A couple of things that stand out to me too are, one is these things from our past, especially if they're significant enough, they don't just solve themselves. And there's so many people that are sitting there either with shame or with coping mechanisms and either hoping go away or not sure about it. And when you put the light on it and you talked about it, there's nowhere for that to hide anymore. It takes that darkness away. And people sometimes are scared to do that, but when you put a light on something, it can't hide in the dark anymore. No matter how big it seems, and you're sharing what seems like probably one of the most painful, embarrassing to share, tough to talk about things you can talk about. And you're doing it. And I just want to encourage our listeners too I remember being at a campfire one night with a bunch of leaders, and there was a man in his 70s who was crying about issues he had with his mom. And here I was in my late 30s, and it floored me. Because I had just assumed someone in their 70s would have it all figured out, right? And I realized this guy never dealt with some things that are in the shadows. He never put a light on it. And I swore that day, I said, I don't want to live that way. I want to make sure that I'm not feeling that way when I hit that. I don't want to have that regret. Like, what can I do now to address it? And you're doing that. So I want to thank you for that. And the second thing I noticed, which is great, is it's not just overnight that it all is fixed. We are a continual work in progress if we're committed to it. And you're committed to the process of being the best version of you that you can be, and you're doing it really in an authentic way. And the last thing is you're doing it for other people to see, not so that they'll watch you, but you're doing it so you can help others. And that is a beautiful cycle that you're doing there. And I really appreciate that you're so willing to share that with us like this today.
Derek, that's a brilliant way to put it together. And there is a reality there, right? When you get to the other side, and it happened for me at that moment when I looked at myself in the mirror. All of a sudden it changes. And, whether you were intentionally sharing it before for the applause, the accolades, the recognition, the acknowledgement, whatever phrase you want to use. And I don't think I was sharing it with this vision of, this is helping other people.
Yeah.
But the change in how you start to see it helping other people is so dramatic.
Yeah.
When you actually know that you're okay.
Your pain that you have, that shame, that secret, that pain you have is going to help somebody else's life someday. It is. You had to go through it, but it is going to. I've had some experiences too, and they're so shameful to talk about or go. And when you go through the work of working through that, and you also took some of the power away that it had over you too, didn't you?
Oh yeah. And here's the thing that we're not saying, Derek, that I think is important to realize. There are lots of times you cross different bridges on that journey. I remember the day I woke up and I thought, okay, I'm finally dealt with this. And I woke my wife up and I said, I need to tell you something. I'm not angry anymore. And I thought I was done.
Right.
I wasn't angry anymore. And what I said to her is, if that individual were to walk to the door today and knock on the door, I would answer the door, but I wouldn't punch him. I wouldn't scream at him. I'd simply say, I think we both know you don't belong here. And then I'd close the door. And that was a step. There was another step of, I'm going to use the phrase, I was molested for over a year when I was 10, to connect with an audience that in an organization where they had a lot of things going on, and I wanted to teach them some stuff. And I knew there were people who had issues like this because I had talked with the HR person and she had shared how they were getting in the way and blah, blah, blah. I don't mean that dismissive, blah, 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 sounds dismissive. They're serious reality. And I thought I'd crossed the bridge then, and I had. But it's this continuous thing. And I think, letting go, I don't have any expertise other than just personal experience here. But letting go of the shame you feel and acknowledging the fact that it wasn't your fault, that it doesn't change who you are. It doesn't make you something that you're scared you're going to become because it happened to you, or any of that kind of stupid stuff that our mind can do. And allowing yourself to bring that. And here's the thing, Derek. If someone's listening right now and they're saying, yeah, but I don't have something like that, because I encounter people like this a lot, and they say, well, I don't have that kind of a story. I don't have that kind of thing that happened. That's fantastic. That doesn't change the fact that you have stuff you have gone through, whether it's a failed business, whether it's a failed relationship, whether it's an early death of a parent. You've got something that taught you something.
Right.
And I firmly believe one of the reasons God put us here where we are and gave us the journey we have is so that we can learn those lessons, and as I like the phrase, earn those lessons, so we open the door to share them with the people who need to hear them.
Right.
And if we trust the fact that they will cross our paths, and just make yourself aware when they do. And even if you're not all the way through, right? I was able to discuss the letting go of the anger at one point with someone right after that had happened. And that opened the door for that person to have a conversation and solve a problem they had with a long-term business colleague. You never, and I think too often we pretend, we put the mask and the suit on. We go into the arena, with a suit of armor, pretending we've got everything covered, and we don't.
Right.
And not only is that okay, it's a path to a deeper level of connection than you ever get unless you allow that to happen.
Michael, thank you again for sharing this. We've got just a couple minutes left, and I want to also talk about what you're doing now. I mean, you're a world-class leader and a world-class thought leader, and what I love too is you're sharing these things, but you're also such a positive, upbeat person. You're such a solutions-oriented expert. You help people in transition. You help entrepreneurs in transition. Just give us a couple highlights about what you're doing now, and and then let's talk about how we can,
Sure.
if our listeners want to learn more, how they can connect with you.
Sure. Love to, and thank you for the opportunity. You just kind of nailed it. I have two basic audiences I work with now. And, one is the entrepreneur who has reached that point where they realize their story has taught them a lot, their journey has taught them a lot, and they want to share those lessons. For example, right now I work with a guy who just sold his company, and there's things they learned along the way. He wants to, number one, capture those lessons so his team that's still there can continue to do what they've done. But even more important, he knows they have an audience, a broader audience, and he wants to share them. So I'm helping him unlock that and create that journey and the messaging that goes around that. The other people I work with primarily now are people who are in some level of transition. And sometimes that's a firing, sometimes it's a retirement, sometimes it is that they've just reached that point in their career where they say, it's time for me to go do something different. And what I want to do is share my journey, share my lessons, and help other people avoid the pitfalls and overcome the obstacles and all that kind of stuff. And so I work with them, pretty deeply. And a lot of that happens in a 2-day deep dive intensive where I get 8 people in the room and, I help them see how can you build a stable, sustainable business around this message that you have earned from your journey and sharing those lessons with the people who need to hear them.
Love that. Tell us about the Hudson method a little bit, because I really like your approach to helping people tell their story.
Well, I crafted that method out of a need to actually put something together that made sense for people. And it's fundamentally, Derek, about mastering your message. It's about mastering what's there. And, you start by saying, look, what's my journey been like? And, we can all map our journey. Here's a very simple way your audience can do this, right? Take a piece of paper, turn it landscape, draw a line from the left side to the right side. On the left-hand side, label the date you were born. On the right-hand side, label it with today's date. Then divide it into 5 equal increments. And then ask yourself the question, what were the most positive things that happened to me in each of those increments? And then draw a vertical line from that horizontal line and have the height sort of represent the relative impact of that thing on you. Then do the same for the negative moments, and then study it. And you'll see this through line in your life, this stuff that has been taught to you. And that through line is a matter of, what happened in the journey, the timeline. It's a matter of those moments that occurred when something changed, the things you drew above and below the line. And then we can extract the lessons from those. And when we extract the lessons from those, it opens the door for us to put them into a framework that we can then share with others to help them. Because let's face it, we all can use shortcuts that help us spend less time getting to where we want to be.
Yeah, what you do is so important, and I share this often, but your story is everything, and you want to know how to tell your message, and you help people tell the message and make sense of the story and help them in the transition, and that is such a that is the most important thing. You notice you and I spent time talking less about what you do and more about your story.
Oh, yeah.
And that is the most interesting part about somebody. If for entrepreneurs listening and for those that are looking to have an impact, knowing how to tell your story and knowing how to share your message and being at peace with it, and that you hear Michael, his story, he's not at conflict with his story. He's at peace with it. And it's in alignment with who he is. And I often see businesses and I often see individuals who are in conflict and trying to understand who they are and understand their story. And that there's a dissonance there that's uncomfortable, even if it's subtle. And me being a brand guy, I notice it pretty heavily.
Yes.
But being at peace with your story and understanding your message and telling it, what a powerful thing it is for you and for your impact on others. So, Michael, I love that you're doing that. We're out of time today, but tell me how our listeners can learn more about you and how they can engage with you.
Yeah, well, you can always reach me, just michael@michaelhudson.com. The website also, if you go to the home landing page, that scroll down to the bottom, there's a 3-part video series I'd invite you to grab that is about attract the right clients, or attract your clients. And part of that is telling the story so you repel the wrong ones and make the right ones raise their hands. And you just summed it up beautifully, Derek. I mean, the simple fact is, most of us don't tell the right story because we think we have to tell it in some way that will impress. If you tell the real story, it's a lot more impressive.
Yeah, couldn't agree with you more. Michael Hudson, I could talk to you all day. Dr. Michael Hudson, go to michaelhudson.com to learn more. He's got some resources there. And Michael, thank you again so much for being a guest for the second time. And I look forward to watching the next things that you're doing on your journey, because you are definitely on a journey and you're in pursuit of greatness. So I can't wait to hear the next great things that you're doing.
I am honored by that, Derek. Thank you so much. It's a great privilege to be the only the third person to come back twice. And hope your audience finds value in this. It's been a privilege.
Absolutely. Talk soon, my friend.
Take care.
You've been listening to the Business Leadership Series, where we engage with leaders who are making an impact on their worlds and who want to share their knowledge and experience for your personal and professional growth. This interview was designed to inspire you to become the best leader you can be.